Lord, give me a sign. The actual title of a DMX song, rap song. Now, DMX, I find it really interesting that DMX and I both came from Yonkers. You know, it takes a unique experience to really stand out in a person's mind. You know, everything that I do, there's a reason behind everything that I do. I don't just do things haphazardly, okay? As if anyone who knows me knows this. I once had a friend years ago who used to always say, you know, well, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Always had a question. He knew that there was a reason behind everything I did. Every job that I left, there was a reason for me leaving. My time was already done. I knew that it was time for me to move forward. Every experience we have in life, there's a reason behind it, okay? I wanted God to show me a sign, to tell me something, to show me where I needed to be or where I needed to go. At the time, I was living in the South with relatives. And living with relatives sometimes teaches you more about them as well as yourself. Your patience level is tested. You see the people around you that you start noticing if a person means you well and does not mean you well. You feel a certain vibration. When you start to stutter in the presence of someone, there's usually either fear or there's a lesson in line. If you don't see the lesson, you will definitely reap the benefits of the cause as to why it was that you should not be in that presence, the presence of those individuals. I kept asking God, I said, you know, I don't know what the reason is for me being here. What am I supposed to be here? Because something does not seem right. And although you might love the individuals that you are in the environment of, God is still showing you, certain lessons. He's showing you different things, and sometimes you don't see what those things are because you are like a child sometimes. And as a child is a child, the parents must step in and speak on that child's behalf sometimes, or redirect that child's focus. So that's what God did. He redirected my focus. I left and God said, it's time to go. And I had a lot of questions, but it wasn't the time for him to answer me in the way in which I wanted him to answer me. When God tells you to do something, you just do it. It's like that parent. It's time to go in the room and go to bed. You don't want to go to bed. You want to stay up and watch that movie. It is time for you to move on. So the times expressed itself in another way. I had gone back because I was worried about my grandmother, and I kept going back to help, to clean up, to do this, and to make sure that she was okay, because I had questions as to the environment, or should I say for the company that was surrounding her. It wasn't for me to ask the question in some cases, but then again, it was. So I got up and I left where I was. I left Florida to go back to South Carolina to make sure that my granny was okay. Every time I went there were certain signs. Now I had left Florida and I was moving on to newer pastures, I'll say. But for some reason, at this point in time, I was told to wake up. So I woke up and it was told again, it's time. Now, I could say to you that God told me that. Somebody else would say, well, God, how do you know it was God? When an inner voice speaks to you, your inner voice, there's only one person you can consider who would actually speak to you. Your spirit guides, God, someone of a higher authority. So I went to take a shower. Now, the day before, I had asked my grandmother, I had asked my cousin where my gown was, because I'd left my gown over at her house. And she said, Granny's got it. When I asked my grandmother where my gown was, she reached into her purse and got the gown out and gave it to me. I found it very unusual
This is a security
that she would give
advisory.
me this gown.
For your safety, please do not leave baggage unattended.
She gave me the
Unattended
gown.
baggage will be
I took
removed
the
and
gown
may be
and I
discarded.
put on
All
that night.
persons must maintain control of
That
their
when I went
personal
to take my
property,
shower, I took the
including
gown
carry-on
off
baggage
and
and
hung
checked
it
baggage,
on the
to
side
avoid
of the door.
transporting items
While
without
in the
your
shower, I
knowledge.
felt the presence of someone in the bathroom
Carrying
with me.
firearms through a
I
TSA screening
continued to
checkpoint of
shower,
an
but I
airport
peeked out
is
of the curtain
prohibited
to
by
see what
federal
was
law
going on.
and
My
regulations.
grandmother came into the
Check all
bathroom,
carry-on
took my
baggage for
gown
firearms
out,
before
and I saw
entering
her
the
put it back in the
TSA
same
screening
purse.
checkpoint.
I could not
Do
understand
not
what
leave
is so
vehicles
important about my
unattended on the
gown. Why is
curb.
my gown being removed
Unattended vehicles
again?
will be promptly
So I got out the
ticketed and
shower,
towed at the
and
owner's
my first
expense.
question was to go and ask my grandmother
Your
where
safety
my
is
gown
our
was.
business.
But
Please help
something
us
said,
help
it's
you.
time, and the
If you
voice was
see
louder
something,
this
say
time.
something.
So I
Report
took my,
suspicious
I
activity
got
to
my
the nearest
stuff
law
gathered,
enforcement
packed my
officer,
stuff up,
TSA
and I
officer,
went to
or
get ready to
airline
go to
representative.
the train. I asked my aunt to drop me off at the train station. She's like, no, why you
Broward
leaving so
County's
soon?
Fort
Come on
Lauderdale
now.
Hollywood
And I
International
knew,
Airport is
even in her
doing its
tone,
part
it
to
was almost
combat
like
human
God was
trafficking.
speaking again.
It's estimated that
Her
over
tone was
25
kind of
million
funny.
people worldwide are victims
Too
of
many
human
things are
trafficking.
happening,
Sadly,
and too many
it's
signs
happening
are being
in our
shown.
community here in
God
South
will give you
Florida.
a sign.
We urge
He'll let
everyone
you
to
know when
report
things are not
suspicious
right,
behavior
and
by
He will
calling
show you in so many
911
different ways.
so that law enforcement
Now, I was
officials
told
can
not to
thoroughly
even go back that
investigate.
last time.
We thank you for
It's like
your
the woman
attention
with
to
that
this
pillar of
important
salt.
issue.
Do not turn around. And she turned around and she turned into a pillar of salt. God gives us all these different signs, and sometimes we do not hear. My motive was to go see my granny. I was always worried about my grandmother, and I just wanted to make sure she was okay. So I went to the house, I cleaned the house, I did all the laundry in the house, for she as well as anyone else who was in the dwelling. And I did some of my own laundry. Took care of everything that day before. That house was spick and span. I made sure I cooked for her. Everything was taken care of. Before I left, I said, Granny, I'm getting ready to go. And she said, can I pay you to stay? And I said, Granny, I have to go. This is not for me to, I can't be here because I'm being directed elsewhere. And I'll never forget her saying, can I pay you to stay? But then I asked, I said, Granny, where's my gown? I'm wondering where my gown is. It's one of my favorite gowns. 100% cotton. I really like the quality of it as well as the lightness of it. You can't sweat in this gown in the summertime, Where I'm in Florida is always summertime. So she didn't answer me. She looked away. So, I just left. You have to look and see that it's not always your understanding as to why and how things are going to happen. Sometimes you just need to listen to what you're being guided to do and just allow the answers to fall into play. Recently, I was in a neighborhood that I wasn't really totally sure of. I had stopped somewhere to pick up some things at a store, a local store, got up, and I decided I was going to, go and get some things. A man appeared out of nowhere, and he helped me with my bag. When I turned back around, it was almost like I was rushing, and I didn't understand why I was rushing. I feel like sometimes I have this New York state of mind where I'm rushing where I should not be rushing, but I'm still rushing anyway. But again, it's like your inner consciousness speaking to you or speaking through you, okay? So this man showing up and helping me with my bag, and then I turned around to say thank you, and the man disappeared. He was no longer around. Now, I can't say who he was, I don't even know. Like I said, out of nowhere, I didn't see him coming. I never saw him leaving. So it's just really interesting how that happened. When I left that area, I heard a loud sound afterwards. I didn't turn back around. I just decided to get my stuff and to continue moving. If God is directing you to move in a certain direction, that is what you're supposed to do. Move in that direction. We don't know sometimes how it is that God guides certain people into our lives or out of our lives. But what we do know is if we're being guided, we need to move forward. Throughout college, I felt like I was being introduced to certain ancestors. I'd have these dreams where I'm looking in the mirror, and in the mirror, it was a person would appear in the mirror and be talking to me. You know, certain things that we have to look at. Everything is supposed to be done in God's time. But what about God's guidance? Do we pay attention to even the smaller things? Right now, there's so many things that are going on, but God is guiding us. There's a certain thing that is going to happen coming up that you might not pay as much attention to, but you might need to know those facts when everything opens up. You know, a mirror is like a portal in some cases, because how is it that the ancestors were able to come through and speak to me? Now, that was a dream. However, dreams are also different warnings or different openings for things that are actually supposed to either come, or things that happen that maybe you should remember. Or maybe if it is something to come, it'll make you more conscious of the situation when it occurs, at least if you're awakened. If you are not awakened, it's going to be a memory, and it'll be something that stands out that you will not forget, so that it'll be a reminder of a bigger picture, okay? Sometimes you have something so small, like a pebble in your shoe. Can't get to it right then and there, but you remember that pebble, in your shoe, because it's hurting you or it's bothering your foot. You got to take your shoe off to take that pebble out. Everything has a reason. And to everything that has a reason, there's a bigger picture to it. Let's look at our lives, evaluate what's going on in it. There's so many different wake-up calls that we are receiving, but we're not looking at them right then and there as an example, as something to open up to a bigger picture. Right now, there's a court procession going on. Everyone might not be invited at that particular moment in time. God is holding you accountable for certain things, but He's also protecting you and harboring you and sheltering you so that you do not find yourself hurt. Whenever He's preparing you for something, as though He is preparing you a plate of food, when He's preparing something before you, you're not going to know all of the facts. You're not going to know everything that's going on. But for everything, there is a season. For everything, there is a reason. Be prepared, because the season is upon you, and the reasons are going to be placed before you as well. Certain questions need answers, and with those answers, you have to know that you are being prepared for that plate of food. Food is not always what you place in your mouth. Food is sometimes what comes to mind, what God is preparing you for, what God is giving you, granting you certain knowledge so that you are better prepared for when the actual situation is upon you. Truth must be spoken. For a person to send you an email when they are in trouble, but never to send you the email when the information was needed. You were supposed to be going to a court procession. You were the main person who needed to be there, so that certain information was supposed to be presented there. But God held you back. He did not allow you because you were not ready for that moment. You were not ready for the things that were going to be placed upon that table. You were not ready to know that that is not your Father. You were not ready to know that it is not time for you to know everything that is being presented. You were not given that option because God was protecting you. He puts a certain protection before you so that you will not go crazy. Puts a certain form of protection there so that you are not given too much too soon. You are being prepared. Certain family members are being tested. They were supposed to speak on your behalf, but they didn't. They paid a child to come before the courtroom and lie on your name. Certain things are happening that you do not understand, that you do not even know. All you know is what God has given you. God gives you certain examples. You might have certain dreams. Your intuition is keener today than it was yesterday. There's certain people who are doing dark art to block you from understanding certain things. That's okay, because God is going to use that in your favor. If there is a case going on and you do not know anything about it, all you know is the different signs and the different seeds that God is planting. What seeds do you know? You plant those seeds and you nurture that soil. You place those seeds in that soil and you place water above it. Once you drop that water, it goes through the soil, it touches the seed, it nurtures things. In life, that's what God is doing for you, preparing you for what is to come. Everything is a badge of honor when it is done in the right way. An honor that God can grant. People can speak on your behalf. People can speak against you. People are always going to be people. They are human beings. They're going to make mistakes. God will not make those mistakes. When you ask for God to grant you a sign, be prepared for what is going to be before you. Don't ask for it if you're not ready for it. But we all know what happens to those of us who are not prepared for things when they are presented to us. It is Indigo Moon signing off. Enjoy your day. You know that the wake-up call is coming.